This video explains about an independent Scottish Reserve Bank and how the economy is important, obviously, for the bank to administer. It is closely aligned with my previous video about an independent Scottish currency. Have a read at this first, please. What I'm going to talk about is three things. I'm going to tell you what a reserve bank manages and what it does. That's about 3 slides or so. I'm going to talk about the importance of a strong currency when you go independent, and a strong currency and a good reserve bank that knows what it's doing. I'm going to introduce you to a website called the Scottish Reserve Bank. So taking each of these in turn, reserve banks are fundamental components of the financial system, serving as the primary institutions responsible for monetary stability and liquidity management in all sovereign states. Their core function involves regulating the supply of money to promote economic stability and growth. Taking each point in turn, a reserve bank is responsible for setting monetary policy to achieve the government's targets, for example, inflation. This involves adjusting interest rates to control inflation and stabilize the economy. By influencing the cost of borrowing and spending, a reserve bank aims to maintain economic stability and the growth within the economy. A reserve bank is the sole issuer within any country of banknotes, ensuring that there is an adequate supply of currency to meet public and government needs. This function is critical to maintain confidence in the currency and the overall financial system. A reserve bank has a mandate to maintain financial stability. This includes monitoring and managing risk within the financial system and acting as a lender of last resort to banks in distress and implementing measures to prevent systemic crises. The Northern Rock Building Society a few decades ago went into trouble, and the institution of the bank and so on decided to let it fold. Although they had authority, they could have kept it going. In the financial crisis of 08-09, the Bank of England within the UK did quantitative easing to prop up a couple of the banks, Lloyds and the Royal Bank of Scotland particularly. It's the responsibility of a reserve bank to do extensive research and collect economic data to inform its policy decisions. This research helps the Reserve Bank understand economic trends. A reserve bank regulates and supervises banks and other financial institutions. It sets up the control in how these institutions are managed and what rules are in place. If it's too lax, you get the chaos we've all seen in the past when things collapse. And too tight, it constrains business and constrains the economy. These functions collectively enable the Scottish Reserve Bank to support Scotland's economy, ensuring a stable financial environment and effective monetary policy. Typically, one of the crucial functions of a country's central bank is reserve management. The reserve is money. To ensure that the central bank has control over adequate foreign assets and funds to meet the national objectives of the country. To support and maintain confidence in the national monetary and exchange rate management policies within money flows between countries. Is to limit, where possible, external vulnerability shocks during times of crisis or when access to borrowing is curtailed. In this case, It has to provide a level of confidence to the markets and demonstrate that it can back up the domestic currency. It has to assist the government to meet its foreign exchange needs and debt obligations and maintain a reserve for potential national disasters that happen from time to time. If you follow what goes on in the world and banks and governments and so on, you'll know that various countries' ability to do these things varies quite a bit. So it's very important that the systems and structures within a Scottish Reserve Bank are top-notch, well-managed, well-implemented. I'm now going to talk about Scotland's economy before I proceed to talk about the Reserve Bank again. The economy underpins every aspect of Scotland's future, obviously. The choices that any independent Scottish government makes, and whether those choices will be easier or harder than those faced by the devolved Scottish Parliament at present, will be dictated by how much money is available to the Scottish Government and the Scottish people. For that reason, the UK Government and the No campaign desperately want you to believe that Scotland will be poorer in an independent country and that it would, therefore, have to raise taxes or cut public spending to protect services. In true UK government form and trends, this of course is a complete lie. Standard & Poor is one of the world's currency rating agencies. They also do an assessment on the country's economic performance. Here's what they said at the time of the independence referendum. They said that Scotland would qualify for S&P's highest economic assessment. According to the rating agency Standard & Poor's, Scotland's wealth levels are comparable with those of AAA listed nations, that's the top rating. As an independent country, even without North Sea oil, Scotland will qualify for S&P's highest economic assessment. The report they published in February 2014 to the Scottish independence referendum concluded that the Scottish economy is rich and relatively diversified, with the 2014 GDP estimated at $47,000 per person, higher than the AA rated Germany, which was 43,000, the AA minus rated UK at 41,000, and the AA minus rated New Zealand at 39,000. The GDP figure is a measure of efficiency and output in the economy. Specifically, this was their words. Even excluding North Sea output and calculating per capita GDP only by looking at onshore income, Scotland would qualify for our highest economic assessment. Higher GDP per capita, in our view, gives the country a broader potential tax and funding base to draw from, which supports their credit worthiness. We would expect Scotland to benefit from all the attributes of an investment-grade sovereign credit, characterised by its wealthy economy, high-quality human capital, flexible product and labour markets, and transparent institutions. Nevertheless, with a GDP only slightly below New Zealand, a developed economy and developed financial system, there is no fundamental reason why Scotland could not successfully float its own currency. At the same time, the Financial Times in February 2014 said an independent Scotland could expect to start with healthier state finances than the rest of the UK. Important stuff that didn't get really broadcast or published by anybody at the time to inform the Scottish electorate. Scotland subsidises the UK by billions of pounds every year and has done for many decades. On the rare occasion when the UK government is forced by parliamentary rules to tell the truth, it admits that fact plainly. According to figures based on published statistics from the Organisation of Economic cooperation and development, that's the wealthy countries of the world, the facts are as follows. Scotland's GDP per capita would place it 15th in the list of the world's wealthiest developed countries, 2 places above the UK, and ahead of all the countries in the list you see here. That sounds a bit different to what the Unionist people at the time of the election tell us, then and now. In the current status of the economy, 91% of all Scottish oil and gas revenue goes straight to the UK Treasury. When oil was found in the 70s and started to be extracted from, first of all, the Scottish area of the North Sea, Norway, who has the same amount of oil as us, they created a wealth fund that is now $2 trillion. The UK government paid for it to deindustrialise the UK economy. And by deindustrialising the UK economy, they wiped out wealth making in the country for the benefit of the financial institutions. Likewise with Scotch whisky. That's pretty obvious, because all the money flows out of Scotland to England, the Treasury down there, and we get our money back in a similar way to other parts of the UK. These are 20, 23 or 24 to 25 figures, depending on the year cycle for each industry. Of course, we all know that there's lots of money coming from renewable energy. Scotland produces enough energy to cover its own needs and now provides 44% of the UK's renewable energy as a whole. At market prices, not the prices the UK pays, but at market prices, the current amount of electricity generated is equivalent to 60 billion a year, and that's estimated to go over 100 billion between 2030 and 2032. Plus, there's always the turnover from these industries as well, and many more, including the small retail businesses around the country. The oil and gas in Scottish waters, the money would flow direct into Scotland. The contracts the oil and gas companies have with the UK government is with the UK government and not with Scotland, and I would expect renegotiation to take place for these reserves within Scottish waters. Because the UK government didn't do a wealth fund and they allowed the oil companies to dictate the terms, this is actually how much the UK got last year from each of those 2 things. We've got all this oil and the UK government gets 10 billion and we get 8 or 9% of it. Scotland's funding, government funding, last year was 88 billion from the UK Treasury. And yet, if you add all this up, it actually comes to 230 billion. And then you've got all the taxes from people's investments and wealth, capital gains, and all the other things that happen over and above all this. Scotland would be a wealthy country in its own right from day one. And by good management, we could do so much better. A reserve bank is important. And the people that set up the independent Scottish Currency Group, which I mentioned in my last slide, have also a website on the Scottish Reserve Bank, which you see here, and that's how you find it. There's lots of information here, blogs, videos, and so on, as with the currency one. If you're interested and you take the time, you'll learn a lot. The type of things they do I'll explain now. But this is what the Reserve Bank says they do. It attempts to clear up many of the deliberate myths surrounding the establishment of a new Scottish currency, which is propagated by unionists, and provide clear answers at this vital time for Scottish support for independence, which is growing by the chaos in the country and economic uncertainty, particularly post-Brexit. Tim Rideout, the leader of the group, argues that the country will do well on an independent currency. Indeed, his argument to the SNP 2019 Spring Conference led to a revolt when the people at the conference voted against the government's policy mentioned within the Sustainable Growth Commission, which said they would use the money from England, allow England and London to control the Scottish economy for a number of years. These are the questions which the website covers. It covers how long will it take to set up the Scottish Reserve Bank and the currency? What about the Scottish pension system and the Sterling pension guarantee, the money that we've already apparently got residing within the UK? What about customer bank deposits moving to a Scottish currency? What about mortgages, loans, overdrafts? How will all this be handled? What size of a building? How many people? How long will it take to set up? The Reserve Bank website and the currency website between them, if you look at them, will actually provide you all this information. Don't believe what the unionists say about a future Scotland and its economy. It's simply untrue. Well, that's the end of my talk. I hope you found it informative. Thanks for listening. But before you go, this is the videos I've made so far, and that's my YouTube channel at the top. If you key that and at Robert Anderson 9116 into the top line search bar in YouTube, you'll find all my videos, or you can input the specific video you're interested in. This is a list that I plan to create over the next short period. I'm going to do a history one about words in our history. It's called What's in a Scottish Name, and it's been a thing I've been interested in all my life. And it does tell you a bit about life if you look into words. I'm then going to follow that up with the reason why the UK establishment and government created Brexit. Thank you very much for listening to this video. I appreciate your support. Thank you.